All right. So, welcome everyone to this event, How to Conduct Market Research with Pankaj Parashar, the co-founder of Purple Ant. This event is presented by the Junior Economic Club of Chicago, and it's also one of the first events a part of our Impact in Entrepreneurship series. So we're really excited to start this series and also just increase a lot of the number of events we have related to entrepreneurship. So a lot of these will just be exposing um, high school students to uh, having more opportunities to learn about entrepreneurship, the principles, and really show you how you can get involved in entrepreneurship from a young age. So yeah, I really thank you all for joining this event, and thank you, Pankaj, for joining us today.
You're welcome, Cole. This is very exciting for me. Because I always keep telling myself that I wish when I was 16, 17, or 18, I had attended or been exposed to some of these, learnings and messages from someone in the society, just so that it would have informed my career choices, and I wouldn't have to wait 30 long years to figure out that all I wanted to do was to, do a startup right on my own. So if this helps in, pushing over anyone in the audience to, to actually think seriously about taking this path, that would be awesome, right? That would be pretty cool from my standpoint. So appreciate this opportunity. I can see people are still joining in, which is great. And just for everyone's benefit, a little bit about me. I am an engineer, electronics engineer by way of education. I've also done an MBA in finance and marketing. Both of them I didn't want to do. Okay, let me just be honest with you. That's the raw reality. The only reason I did those was because when I was growing up, my parents, society at large, everyone kept telling me that I had to be either an engineer or a doctor to be a really successful person. And because I hated biology, I kind of went into engineering, and then from there I hated being an engineer. So I thought doing an MBA would be cool to do something in sales or marketing, and then I took marketing because I couldn't find a finance job, which is what I signed up to do. So my life was a series of accidental choices. None of them were my choosing. I joined corporate world, worked for 5 different companies. Most of them was in sales and marketing, business development, account management, etc. So it's a kind of the front end, basically talking to strangers all day long and convincing them to part money, right, with us, right? That's how I thought about my job. That's pretty cool, if you think about it that way. But really, I think the part of my job that I enjoyed the most was the interactions and the learning that came with interacting with my customers. I always say that the 5 minutes that I spend with a customer at the coffee counter gives me more insights about the area, the offering, the solution, what we're selling and delivering, than any amount of theoretical lessons that I would have to take, either online or in person. So after about 22 years of doing that, I finally realized that growing up, I actually missed a very important option, which was to do something on my own, to be a founder of something which is going to impact the community, the society, and myself, because I believed so much in that idea. And that's what made me start Purple Ant about 2 years ago. So a lot of things came together, but that's how in 2018, so it's slightly more than 2 years. I'm discounting the COVID year last year, but slightly over 2 years now in this journey. It's been an amazing one so far, and I'm really glad to share my learnings, experiences, and sort of definitely around market research. But I'll just be open for any questions even outside of that. So with that, Cole, I'll hand it back to you, And maybe one of the things we could do in that poll, that first question is what I think I'd be interested in knowing. So if you want to run the poll at this point, I think that may not be a bad idea.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that introduction and kind of just talking about that personal narrative and how you grew into the startup world. I think that's very important to hear, and that you kind of just realize different things about like your personality and how you can shape that into your career later on. I think that's really important to note. I'll just quickly go through some more about what we do here at JEC, just for our audience, and make sure that everyone knows. So the Junior Economic Club of Chicago was founded in 2014, and we are an entirely student-run 501c3 nonprofit. Um, we basically just provide members equal opportunity and exposure with events like these, helping them feel empowered to become the next generation of effective leaders through our quarterly forums, weekly workshops, and different community initiatives. Our club is also fully funded. Our club funds our memberships and our members of 150 of Chicago's most ambitious students from 35 plus schools around Chicago. Um, so then moving forward, if you are a member, please don't forget to join our post-event discussion to just go over your experience and how we can improve events like these. And if you're interested, please chat Alp Demirtas. And then also for questions later on, we will open it up to the rest of the audience so you can privately chat myself, and you can choose to have your question asked live by you or ask it anonymously through me. So Pankaj, you kind of already went through some more of your experience before, but I guess I'll just go through some of what is online and what is presented to most of the public. So Pankaj has 20 plus years of experience working at the intersection of technology and insurance, like you said, and as an IT service provider executive, he has seen at close hand the business problems faced by industry and has led teams to provide solutions using technology. With InsurTech now becoming mainstream, he wants to use his rich experience to accelerate the adoption and implementation of these technologies in solving real challenges. Using IoT, Internet of Things, and AI, artificial intelligence, Purple Ant enables insurance companies to improve both retention and loss prevention for their customers. Purple Ant is a platform that can ingest, normalize, aggregate, and integrate any type of sensor data with key devices, technologies, and pre-integrated into the platform offering. So I guess that's just the gist that is normally online and is open to the public, but we have you here right now. So I think we can move on to more of just a conversation with you. Um, so
Yeah.
I will share this poll. So Pankaj, he wanted to get to know some of our members more. So I think it would be important to hear from you all and kind of conduct some market research right here. Um, so I'm going to launch this poll. Um, so let me know if you all are able to answer this and just talk more about how you all are feeling about startups and if you've been involved in any in the past, and what you think market research means.
Good. So we have about 25 people in. Awesome. See, that's what I wanted to see. My hypothesis was there are going to be some people in this audience who already have something going that's earning some money. Glad to see those there as well. This is great. This is great.
Yeah, this is really helpful. I can kind of see um, the vast majority of people are saying that market research is all of the above. I think that definitely helps with seeing where understanding is at this point. And it's varied across the board about startups and who's doing things right now and who plans to do um, different projects in the future. So I think that's really great.
Yeah. I think it's it's literally half who are interested to learn about things which they might be using a little bit later in life. Some have are already on it, and then it's that second question answer is pretty good one, because if more than half the people, or 80%, so 4 out of 5 people, like agree with what market research means, doing all of talking to users, customers, understanding the market size, etc. That's amazing statistics. I wasn't wrong. I knew high schoolers were smart. I just didn't know they were this smart, right? Just like uh, one of my observations, folks, is that I think the age at which people are starting to think about founding companies and building products is getting younger, and I mean that age is getting lesser and lesser, right? So earlier it used to be people would graduate from college 22, 23, and then do something in college, but then take off after that, right? uh, but I'm starting to see, because I do a lot of work with interns. Okay, we are very open, and I've worked with a lot of interns. I think I've done about 9 or 10 projects so far with interns, right, from different colleges, different schools, including high schools, right? So in fact, my brightest intern so far in computer science was this kid from the IMSA school. She was, I think, I forgot if she was a sophomore or a junior. And in 30 minutes, she picked up everything about Purple Land, because it's damn complicated what we try and do, faster than anybody that I would interact and interview, right? So it was just mind-boggling. So Cole, this poll is very helpful. I think it's making me sort of take a broader view of what people are expecting from this conversation, and then also from a market research standpoint, talk a little bit about some of the best practices, some of the common mistakes that I did, right? And I wish that people that are in the audience, for them to avoid. uh, and at different points in time, if someone has a question, please feel free to call. I'll let you be the MC on the questions. And I want to make this interactive, right? This isn't just me talking in vacuum. I want this to be an interactive process, because some of you are already in in the works with building a company, earning some revenue. So we can make this really fun and exciting. And I have a feeling, my other hypothesis, that I'm going to learn something from this session today and take away. It's not just the other way around. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, Pankaj, I really appreciate that you say that a lot of high schoolers are getting into entrepreneurship at such an early age and also just really bright. And I think JEC brings together a lot of that energy. And I think it's really important to just have this exposure as high schoolers, because even if you are creating startups and creating business ventures, sometimes you don't know exactly like the route to go or exactly like some of the first steps. And I think market research is very important and kind of sometimes overlooked, I think. So I wanted to ask you, like, how crucial do you think the market research stage is in developing startups? And how do you really like get to that point?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Cole. And You're quite right. If especially when you're doing something for the first time as a founder, right? As wanting to build a product, and build a company and try to earn some money, you have this insane urge to build something really quickly, right? Because you have to have a product, right? When you're doing it for the first time, which is what I had, right? So when I launched Purple Ant and I got my inspiration and the idea, I'll talk a little bit about what I did. What I did was right, and what part of what I did, which was a lot in those days, which was wrong, was this immediate urge to just get a validation from a lot of people to say that this is a pretty cool idea, and I had this urge to just start building something, because that's what startups do. They have to build something. And only later that I realized that the right step to do actually is not to build anything for some time, right? And to do what you refer to as market research. So why is that so important? The reason why that is so important is because a lot of the time, especially for first time founders, you have drunk your own Kool-Aid, right? You just believe that your idea is God is the best idea since sliced bread. So, of course, it's like, it's a no-brainer. So you should get going. And at best, what you do is you go to some people and just ask them if it's a cool idea or not, and if they say yes, you go ahead. That's not the right way to think about it, because what happens is that once you actually start building the product, you've already sort of formed a point of view on what the solution needs to be, right? And so when you're building something, you're having a point of view, you're having a solution, and then it becomes difficult to understand what exactly was the problem that you were solving. Okay. Because then, everything is colored, like you've got now blinders on at this point, and sort of, you might be trying to build a square peg for a round hole, so to say, right? So so from a market research standpoint, I would say the first sign that you should see that you have not done market research is if, right, the very next day, the next week, you started to build off without having data to back it, right? So market research is nothing else but just building a data that gives you the insight to figure out what to build, right, and where to start. And so, when I think about market research, there are a lot of different elements to it, but at the end of the day, you think of market research as two kinds of research, right? There's a secondary research and there's a primary research, right? So the secondary research is all what you're doing online. You're listening to, I don't know, YouTube videos maybe on that topic, reading some white papers, going to some online resources to just get yourself up to speed, maybe going and attending some events where somebody knowledgeable about that area is speaking, and so you just want to make notes. That's all important, right? That secondary research is important so that you get a little bit of a holistic view of how different people think about that area as a good data point. But while secondary research is important and you should do that, it's the primary research which is the most important aspect, because primary research is when you as a founder are talking to users, right? And those users, I'm going to use the word users, but the word users also includes some component of users that actually become your customers, right? They are the ones who pay you. Not all users pay you. Some users just want to use your product, and that's okay, right? In a lot of the B2C or business to consumer startups, the users are are the most important element, because they may not pay any money, but that's how your business is run. You just want more and more users to use your product. So users, customers, stakeholders, indirect, you have to understand who are all the people, stakeholders who are participating in that sort of the workflow, that whatever is it that you're building, right? And the consumers who are using, who are the influencers, so to say. uh, these days, if you're thinking about a lot of B2C products, there are a lot of LinkedIn influencers and you LinkedIn or Instagram influencers that make a lot of money, right? A lot of companies just pay them because they have a lot of people following them. So companies want to learn about those customers through them, right? So the influencers now become a very important element of the market research as well. So, step one on that primary research is understanding who are those, what we call personas, right? What are those personalities? What are the different kinds of people that we need to talk to? And then comes the second most important thing, which is what are the questions that you need to ask them? Let's say you have a user and they said, you know what, Pankaj, I'll help you. I'll give you 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever time you need, because I like you as a person and I believe in what you're trying to build. So yeah, shoot. Now, the mistake that I used to do going into those interactions is not have a plan for the Q&A, right? So my plan at that point was only, hey, here's an idea. What do you think about this idea? Do you like it? Da da da. Have you seen anything like that? And those kind of the common sense questions, not bad questions, mind you. But what I learned was that those questions, the answers to which do not give me any data to work off on. It does not inform what features, what solution I need to build, what are the unique aspects of those features that I need to think about while building the product. So none of that comes out, right? So then I learned, and there is this concept, and if you guys wanna Google it, you should. The most important concept, according to me, is this concept of jobs to be done, JTBD. Okay, Clayton Christensen is the person who came up with that theory, and jobs to be done basically is a concept that says that no one cares for your solution, your product. People care about what they think and they do with how they're living their life. Okay, so that's an important element of this user questionnaire that you need to design. That I need to understand, if I'm talking to someone, what do they do? Why do they think they need to do something? Do they say what they do, or do they just say and then don't do? Right? So there's all these nuances of thinking and feeling and saying and doing that you need to get a level deeper on. And the best way to do that is to come up with a structured questionnaire, which are more sort of open-ended question. And a little bit later, I'll show you sort of finally what are the questions that I ask, our customers, our users, to help inform our product. But I got there, literally 2 years after we started the journey, because nobody told me what to, like, what is market research, how should you do market research. And so I kind of learned it just hit and trial, so to say. But structuring that questionnaire is the most important primary research that should be done, because you got to understand people's feelings, right? How do they behave? And everything in the world is about feelings. It's about human feelings at the end of the day. Even if you're like, we're building a B2B, business to business play, even in our value proposition, we have to think about, okay, if I'm selling my product to the chief underwriting officer, the chief digital officer, what emotions are they going through with the challenges that they face on their day-to-day basis, right? Where can I come in? What's the biggest competitor out there, which is status quo? Like, people do competitor research, and you want to know which is the other 10 companies trying to do what you're doing. Actually, the biggest competition you have is, if you're building something new, why should the customer do anything different than what they're doing now, which is not doing anything, right? So it has to be something which is very, very painful for them, that they're almost compelled to find an answer. They're not able to get the answer, so they need to now find your product. So when you're thinking about market research, those are all the elements that sort of come to my mind. And let me show you a screen which shares what was the um, questionnaire that we finally came through. Are you able to see the screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Right. So this is where we ended up with. Okay. literally 2 years into it. And if you would ask me 2 years ago when we started off, questions I was asking was, hey, how cool is this idea, right, of using IoT? And, have you heard of other people, doing something like what we're thinking, which is backwards. If you look at these questions, none of them talk about the product or the solution, because it's all about understanding the problem from their lens, right? And getting perspectives. And the more people you talk, the other element to the primary research is the more people you speak with, the more insights and perspectives you'll get. And think of perspectives as not right or wrong, good or bad, but as different. They're all different perspective. You could have a user in the same role, and two different users will have very different emotions about what they're experiencing that you're trying to capture. And that's okay, right? You need to just simply capture all of that and then take it on to, the concept of value proposition, which is, using the jobs to be done, the interviews that you've done, the output of all of that, and now starting to create a solution or a product. And value proposition is sort of the core element of that, which is capturing, okay, what is the problem that we heard, at what point was that pain, you talk about customer journey mapping. So where was the pain the highest, where I need to sort of, intervene, how can I intervene, what can I do to eliminate, that pain for them. So that's how you construct your thinking about your value proposition. And your value proposition will have, you might come up with 10 things that are different about you and that you want to solve for. And we did that too, right? We came up with so many of these different features. Half of them were not even like, when we started testing them, people started using the product, we realized that we basically built 5 features that nobody uses. And that was a good insight for us, because typically when you're startup founder, you're constrained for resources. So at some point in time, you have to make a decision of how much do I build in the product, how much features and how many benefits do I need to build in the product set, because there is no end to it. And there is no right or wrong answer, but I think the one answer that I've heard the most often, which I use as a guiding principle, is that it should ideally be 3, but no more than 5 features, right? 3 to 5 features is max, and 3 is ideal actually, where you say that these are the 3 things, these are the 3 problems I'm going to solve, these are the 3 unique aspects that I'm going to build, and then have those tested. So with that, Cole, I'm going to just sort of pause here, because I think we're halfway through. I kind of shared at a very high level a lot of different concepts. I don't know if I made any sense to anyone, but hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, I think that was definitely very helpful. Just looking at like how you differentiate the type of research that you do at first with like secondary and primary, and looking at how the primary research, you really can't just ask surface level questions that really won't get your company anywhere and really won't show you what you need to solve and what like the most like pain is coming from. I think what's really important is kind of looking at those stakeholders and um, looking at where to find them. So I was just gonna ask, like, how do you kind of look for those different audiences that and segments of your audience that um, will potentially be your customers, and how can you kind of differentiate that if you're doing different types of businesses, like doing like nonprofit organizations because they're still customers even if they don't pay, and for-profit businesses. How do you kind of structure those questions and find those people in those different realms?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer the sort of first question you asked was like, how do you find those people, right? That's a very important question, because that's especially for high schoolers, you're just getting going, and it's sometimes harder because you don't have a big network, right? You don't have a lot of network of different kinds of people that know you, that you can directly reach out to. It's not that obvious. So I'll say 2 things, right? One is that um, it you don't need to worry about how many different kind of users that I need to get on day one. You need to just start with one user type. Okay. If that user type is in your immediate circle of friends, family, an introduction that anyone in that circle can make, that would be the place that I would start. Now, the reason why I like doing the one-on-one person, well, these days it's all Zoom. It could even be a phone call, although I like video calls because you want to observe their body language, right? So it's because we're, the finer language, finer thought that I was sharing in my answer was it's about emotions, and you really need, you can only see the real emotions when you're in person, right? Sometimes it's harder to make out the emotions when you're on a phone because you only have to detect the changes in the tone, right? So there's a whole amount of science that's been done, Cole, around like what makes for a good effective communication in person, tone, speech. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. So in person is always better, but in these days Zoom calls are fine. So I would just use that initial circle of friends to go, because I believe that the best primary research is done one-on-one if possible, right? The second best option is to come up with a questionnaire, right? A written questionnaire, which you can either email them. Uh, these days, you can even text them. There are a lot of online Google Forms, etc., type forms, etc., tools that you can use to, get those feedbacks and answers to those questions. But because these are a lot of open-ended questions, people, it's up to them, right, how they interpret the answers to that. And so there's some information that's going to come back to you. It's not going to be optimal. So you can also use email to deliver the questionnaire. uh, Outside of that first circle of friends and family, I would say there's actually startups that just provide user for interviews, right? For user interviews. In fact, there are two or three companies in Chicago that I know. I think one is actually called User Interviews. So, hey, if you can't find any users that you can interview for your product, there are people who will get you those people, okay, for a fee. So that's another option that is available. The third thing that I like to do is, and this is where the hustle comes in, is like I've had friends of my son, my daughter, right, who are doing some projects, approach me through them, right? So now you start looking at how can I leverage these first set of, first network to reach out to second network or third network. Are there churches, temples that you go through if you're a person of faith? Can you leverage any of those organizations, right? The to advance your cause. Are there any? You mentioned not for charity. There are a lot of charitable causes that happen all around you, right? And these days, I'm finding LinkedIn is a very good source for who those are, right? So they literally tell you, if you know what zip code you're in, they'll tell you what are all the charitable causes which have a job opening, which have some, volunteering help that they need. And that's one another way to figuring out who's out there that you could reach out to. Because especially when it comes to not-for-profit causes, people do want to volunteer their time, right? People want to help other people. So I would say that would be the other way to find these users. And one of the questions that I always ask my primary customers, and that's how I started, was who else should I be talking to if I am, researching this area, if I'm building something? And they will tell you, like, go to this person, go to that person. And so this word of mouth referral is a very effective way of finding your additional users. And who knows, that second person might tell you about a third kind of user profile that you should be talking to. So that becomes a network effect, and I find that that's another strategy that we've used for Purple Land.
Wow, that's very interesting. I think it's very helpful to note, like, to start with like the people that are closer in your circle and kind of like move like outwards in that way. And I think looking at like some of the referrals, I think that is really great. Um,
I'll just add one last thing, which I saw at 1871. Again, it didn't come to my mind because we haven't been going to the offices for so long, Cole. But I have very often seen in 1871. For those of you guys know, it's a co-sourcing startup place in Merchandise Mart building, River North, downtown. In the kitchen table, almost every day there would be people with Dunkin' Donuts, okay, sometimes with coffee, and they just say, "Hey, would you be willing to take a 2-minute survey, 5-minute survey in exchange for a donut and a coffee?" I found that to be very, very interesting way of again getting user, feedback. And one of the things that is harder to with that is, of course, qualifying whether everybody who's there for the donut is your user or not. And there you need to go a little bit of, like, the first two questions could be those qualifying questions, like, are you ABC, right? Do you do this? And if yes, then you continue with them. Otherwise, they, I guess, they get a free donut, and they're on their way. uh, but I just thought I'll mention that to you, Kola. That was a pretty interesting, innovative idea to get users feedback.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think looking at like kind of the more old-fashioned way of conducting that type of research and just going um, just up to people and interacting with them, I think that is really helpful to think about and just kind of like keep in the back of your mind of like what there are a ton of different ways to kind of just do that research. I think we can move on to some of the prepared questions. Um, and then we'll move into the more live Q&A. I'm sure a lot of you have some burning questions about just the process of market research and just startups in general, but we'll move into some of these and hopefully we can get some of those questions answered. Um, so I will share my screen. 1 second. All right. So now here are just some prepared questions that I had. So I was just wondering if there's any advice you would give to a founder, especially someone of our age or just young adults that's struggling with kind of like executing their business plan. Um, this could involve market research or just anything that's like prior to putting your business on the market and having it available for customers.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I would say that if you are not struggling, you are not a founder. Okay, I don't think any founder has executed a business plan without struggling at some or all stages of the business plan, right? So first of all, if you're struggling, it's totally normal. It's totally okay that you don't have answers to all the questions, because that is the process, that is the journey that you're going to go through. Uh, Now, the business plan itself, Cole, is a very broad area. So, you could be struck at very different ways. But I'm just going to interpret this as saying that, look, you've not yet, you're still in the initial stages, right? You've not yet really built your product, or you're struggling with the initial stages of either figuring out who are the users, uh, what should I be building, or I have an idea, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know where do I start doing it, right? Where do I start building? So the advice that I would just say is that I struggled with this, idea as well, in terms of, what am I missing, right? So I'll give you my example, that my first thing was, I just wanted to we built a prototype in 6 months time, and we struggled because when we built that, it took us 6 months instead of the 2 months. So it took us way longer than we thought it would take. But even when we built that prototype, it was actually of no use, because I couldn't give it to a customer and say use it. It was just a prototype. It was just a, proof that we could do something and build something. And so I struggled with, what did I do wrong? And uh, what I did was I went to other people for advice. So one of the things that I always big about is that founders need to have is a network and connection to other founders, mentors, that they could go to, who would give them some ideas. Because when you're out of ideas yourself, and you're going to be out of ideas to solve the problems very soon, especially in areas that you have no idea what to do, it is very important to get to someone who has potentially some answers. So good news with these days is I'll give you a couple of free resources. So Y Combinator, which is the world's biggest accelerator at this time for any tech startup company, runs a free school. I think they do it every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And they do a design sprint. They kind of help you with uh, how to very quickly execute on that aspect of building an MVP, or maybe you're a later stage than MVP, or you're pre-MVP. And there are a lot of online videos that they share supporting the activity that you are supposed to do. Okay, so I found those videos to be very, very helpful. And Cole, what I'll do is I'll share those links with you. You can share it with your audience as well, where they give these tips from kind of the people who have been there, done that, and have a answer. It may not be the right answer. You might still struggle, but at least you'll have new ideas to test and move the needle forward with what you're doing. So that I found to be something which has helped me. Because back to my example, it was only at 1871 when I went through the Pyros program that I realized that I have completely missed this market research, user interview, what product features should I build, how should I think of building that product. That whole product piece was something which was completely missing, because my background was more sales and marketing. My co-founder was a tech guy, he's an engineering genius. But this thing in middle, which is the product, was, I mean, we thought we had it figured out until we realized we didn't, right? So we then went about building it the way that others have, and is pretty well acknowledged now in the world as how to think about building any startup, including so I would say one thing about, you mentioned about people at your age. I really think that the struggles, anybody who's founding a company for the first time, no matter the age, will go through the same challenges. Okay, so I whether you start at 18, or whether you start at 50, or whether you start at 79, like the guy who built KFC, it doesn't matter. The process is literally the same. And the advantage with the young age is that you guys are so good digitally, digital natives. You can just sort of grasp technology very, very quickly. And with the advent of internet, we have so many resources online and ability to connect with people for specific problems, right? So now, for example, after being in the 1871 network, and I mentioned that building that network is super important. So now I know, if I'm faced with a digital marketing, social media challenge, who do I go to? Okay, if i'm if I'm faced with a challenge of my website content needs to be updated, I've got some insights on what needs to go in, but how should it go in there, and I'm not the expert in this, I know who is, right? So I can go and just bounce off, here's what they would do if they were in my place. So look, you don't have to have all the answers yourself, unless you're Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. I mean, those guys pretty much had most of the answers themselves. But I feel that you should just go and build this network of experts uh, who or if you don't know, internet makes those access to those people possible.
Yeah, that sounds very great. I think just digging into that network and kind of looking for people who are very knowledgeable about different aspects of what you're trying to create. I think that's a very important aspect to look at, and just gain insight from the people that are around you, because there's so many people with so many like niche interests that you can really um, just like pick their brain, ask questions, and figure out like where you can go with that. And I would think our members would really appreciate some of those resources that you talked about. for like just startup accelerators and things like that. So
Yeah.
I will move on to the next question. So you've done the market research. What's next? I think this is a very important question. Just looking at the process of building your own business, I think asking people questions is great, and figuring out who your customers are is great. But then, what do you do past then to really start getting that to market and creating like possibly like an MVP?
Yeah, like so I think that you could literally divide your job as a startup founder to do the market research and have come up with some answers to the questions that people are looking for, and then everything else is about validating that, right? And iterating on that, right? So your research might have said that you need to solve this problem and you can solve it in this way, and there's these three features that need to be built because these are the benefits that the user is looking for it that helps them do their job better, etc., etc. And you then all you're doing is you now moving towards the concept of the MVP, right? The minimal viable product, which is what's the least common like was the least thing that I could build which could validate whatever my market research is saying. And one of the interesting ways that I've learned, and not at first, but through hit and trial, is using tools like Unbounce, right? And you can just actually it doesn't cost you anything, but you can create a web page, an app, whatever, and you can start getting feedback on from your users, right? On is this thing of value to them or not, right? And this is not a real product. You'll just record like what did people sign up for that, did they want to use that feature or not, right? And that's important input for you. And so there's a lot of ways now to very cost effectively start thinking about what an early MVP looks like that matches that insights that you've gathered from the market research. So a couple of things, cool. Do market research, get to the insights part, which tell you, what's the value proposition, which is describing the sort of the problem, the solution, the differentiators, like all of that aspects, and that lends itself into building a very simple, what we call MVP product. And I'm kind of at a very high stage right now because each of these steps actually are very, very detailed and nuanced. But user research results into the MVP, and the whole game of startup is how what's when do you get to the MVP, when do you start getting traction, which is basically users are testing your product, giving you feedback, and you're improving the product now to deliver what the users are asking for, right? And so once you get into that iteration game, uh, that's an awesome place to be. That's the right place to be because now you know that you're starting to generate some buzz and some momentum. So everything that you do before that is informing that step, right? So market research, what insights, value proposition, features, build that in the MVP and then test it and then validate what you learn from market research is right or not. And you might come out with an answer which is no, the users actually like some other aspect, which is totally fine. As a startup founder, you have to be, startup founders have a very interesting life in that it's all about contrasts. Like in this thing about timing, you can't jump too quickly into building something, but you can't take forever too, right? Because there is momentum, there is motivation, and so there is this right balance, which is somewhere in between, which is the right time that you need to take for your MVP. And so similarly, from a feature standpoint, you need to build something. You don't need to have to wait to figure it out and get to 100% perfection. So I always believe that one, something is better than nothing. Okay, so build something, test it out, and get feedback and get going. Uh, and uh, and it's all about finding the right balance. It's all about right to balance at every stage. don't do too much, but don't do too less. So something in the middle to the balance.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And just looking at past the market research, you're going to continue doing that research and continue improving what you created and having that minimum viable product. Just looking at what your customers would really appreciate and really use with your company. I think that's very important to look at like what they find the most important and what they find to be the most useful in their experience. So yeah, I think we'll move on to the last prepared question since we are almost at our time, and then we can move into the live Q&A. Um, so how can high schoolers get involved in the startup world? I know a lot of us are kind of have ideas and a lot of things that we want to execute. And I think this event is probably helping a lot of people have a more clear vision of how they should get started. But what are your tips for how we can get involved? And are there any careers that you see as like most prominent in the startup world?
Yeah, I would say, if you get the opportunity, if I were you, I would intern with startups that are already here, right? So in Chicago itself, I think we have thousands of startups, right? Technology startups, non-technology startups in different areas, right? Food, it's not for-profit startups, a lot of different causes. So 1871 is a good source. Built in Chicago is a good source for who those startups are. The reason why I say that's a good option is because as a high schooler, you might have a good idea, you might want to do something. But if I were you, I would actually have some experience working at another startup so I can see how things get done. Okay, and there is, and if and like I said, Purple Land has always been open to a lot of the interns and high schoolers to basically work with us. I think you finding those opportunities one way, getting associated with the intern programs. There are a few in the Chicago area. Cole, I'll send you the links to them, which I have heard of. So using those, call them intermediaries, right? People who help interns get students get internships at startups is another way. And third thing is, look, do your own research. And I can tell you that for me, if someone is keen about working with Purple Land and approaches me, we can create a role for them, right? The beauty about startup world is that you can author your own role. So uh, there is no reason why, if you're very motivated and very eager to help, if you reach out and share what area you want to do something on, startups are very open to working with people like that, because what all you're looking for is energy, curiosity, hard work, flexibility, and basically just wanting to learn, and you can align with that with any startup.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think gaining that experience now will be really helpful in just figuring out what you really need to understand when you actually start your own business, and just gaining insight from possible mentors. I think that is just really helpful as we move forward. So I will go through a couple of these. So now we are on to our live Q&A portion. So I will stop sharing so everyone can see each other. I'm glad a lot of people have cameras on. Thank you for that. So I believe the first person who wanted to ask a question was Mia. So if you want to just go ahead and unmute, that would be great.
Hi everyone, it's nice to see you here. Sorry I don't have my camera on. I'm currently like going through the college stuff. I'm not a senior, I'm a junior, but I'm just looking into what my options are going to be. So I've kind of been looking at it through a little different lens as I'm hearing what you're saying. So I was just wondering how much your education played into the techniques of collecting data? Like, was it more things you've learned from your professors, or is this technique of like you prefer one-on-one and asking questions through experience? I'm like trying to kind of weigh out what I want to focus on in school, and I feel like experience versus education is something that I need to be asking more questions on. So here I am.
Yeah, and this is my opinion, my thoughts, Mia. So take it for what it's worth. It's 100% experience. My education taught me nothing about real world. It
Okay.
gave me a foundation
Yeah.
to go off on. It gave me a network, but there's nothing in the world that I've learned which is basically what the professors taught me. So that doesn't mean a college isn't important, and that's a big debate, but I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
I will say this, that there are some colleges these days who are very, very supportive of the startup world and those students who want to do and build something on their own. And you might want to look at that aspect of the college, right? When you're doing, if there's something about startup world that interests you, you might want to just have that lens into evaluating the college choices that you have.
Okay. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
All right, great. I think we have another question from Alp. So if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Hello. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation and just talking about it. My question was, how do you use storytelling in market research, and how has it benefited the data collection process, if you have?
Yeah, storytelling is not just important in user research, Alp. It's important in every aspect of the startup world because people love stories, right? How many times have you tuned into something which starts with once upon a time in a land far, far away, right? And then the story begins and you're engaged, and whatever comes next, your chances are that you listen to it, right? So long story short, is really important. In fact, you use that to build the questionnaire, the user interview. A lot of times, because some of the questions you ask is, okay, when was the last time you experienced something like this? Tell me more about it. See, people like to narrate and tell experiences that they've had themselves. And so by making them the central cast of your storytelling session is a key strategy to get the best answers out of them. So I would say absolutely at the heart and center. And if you can master storytelling, so there are two things that I think as a startup founder you have to master: storytelling and creating FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. That FOMO skill is the most important because that's what's going to make your customer buy your product, your investors to put in money in you, your team members to join you, and then storytelling is how you do that.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for your questions. We are kind of at our time, so I hope everyone's questions were able to get answered. I believe some of them on the form were kind of just answered throughout the presentation, but if you have any additional ones, feel free to email myself and I will forward them to Pankaj. And hopefully, if you'd like to answer some after buyer members, I think that would be really helpful in their journeys. So
Yeah, I'm very happy to stay connected with them. Feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn is probably the best way. Happy to help whichever way I can. I will share that one quick, I forgot to mention in the market research section, but if you guys like reading books, one of the best books that I've read on this topic is called Just Enough Research by Erica Hall. Okay, so that's the one book I would recommend that you guys read and go through. Probably one of the best ones. Okay, and then other than that, I'm happy to hang out if you'd like, Cole, for some time if any students are interested. But otherwise, this is great. I'll send you those some of those resources that I mentioned, and I look forward to wishing you the best and everyone who wants to become a founder.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you talked about in this presentation and in this event. I think it is really helpful to have that kind of like guiding point when you have all these ideas floating around and problems that you want to solve, and having kind of like a process through it all and making it more organized in that journey. So yeah, thank you so much, Pankaj. Really appreciate everything.
You're welcome. Good luck. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, and you as well. And thank you everyone for joining today's event. Be sure to sign up for next week's event, Venturing into Social Entrepreneurship with Dalara Saeed, CEO of VPeer. That's also another event, a part of the Impact in Entrepreneurship series. So I hope you all are enjoying the series and will come to some of our future events, and make sure you stay up to date with us on social media. Um, and you can follow us on Instagram at JEC Chicago and on LinkedIn. Be sure to connect